Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to the Midlife Revolution featuring Randy Watts and Jean Judson. Hey, guys.
How you doing?
Thanks for
Yay!
putting this together tonight.
This is fun. This is the premiere of a beautiful thing, and
Yes,
it's only going to get better.
that's right. A premiere of a brand new show. Technically not the Midlife Revolution, technically not Latter Daily Digest, but a whole new thing, the Salt Lake Expositor. Randy, do you want to tell us what that title is all about?
Yeah, you know what? This program is specifically geared to cover a few of the top stories of what's going on today in the LDS atmosphere. Um, but what makes it a little more unusual is that it's a call in show, and we invite everyone to call in and comment on the topics that we're discussing. So I think that's going to be a real kick in the head, and I'm looking forward to it. I know I've sent the number out to a bazillion people, and is there a place where our viewers can see the number to call?
I'm putting it in the chat right now. And
Okay.
Jean, this was sort of your brainchild. So do you want to comment on the auspicious occasion of the birth of your brainchild?
Yeah, so it's something I've been very reluctant to do because it takes skill, knowledge, and street smarts, we'll say, and of which all I have very little, but it's going to help us grow, I think, and we're going to see what happens. The main thing is we thought that the other news shows, you get to hear what the talking heads think, but you don't, and you might be able to chat, but you don't get to voice in real time on air your thoughts regarding the news that's among us and around us all the time. Seems like every day there's a news story. I saw the CES director, I think, something where he had like a list of SA and other things wrong as like a news feed, and like every day there was a news headline of something. The church in the news. The church is growing in stature among, we'll say, less than good doers.
Yeah.
And
So
I
there's
sent
always
that CES director an invitation to come watch this. So
oh,
hopefully
good.
he'll show up.
There you go. Yeah, I've been following the CES directors. I forget exactly the name of the channel, but I've been following that account for quite some time. One of the first accounts that I followed when I was leaving the church and on TikTok, and have always appreciated everything that they repost. So the LDS Church is always in the news for good and for bad, but we are the Salt Lake Expositor is a callback to back in the day when Joseph Smith was doing not so great things in Nauvoo. He was practicing polygamy privately, but denying it publicly. And some people close to him printed a little sheet called the Nauvoo Expositor, which exposed what Joseph Smith was actually doing. And so we decided to call this the Salt Lake Expositor because we want to expose anything that's going on in the land of Mormondom that is harmful to anyone, really.
And we
So,
can also say in the news, the church made a behind the scenes headline in their release of gospel topics essays, or whatever they called it, some sort of essay, where they attribute the article to the Nauvoo Expositor. They actually cite the Nauvoo Expositor as saying, "See, Joseph Smith practiced polygamy."
Right. And I might
that's right.
point that you probably expected to see us show up in our superhero costumes, but we try to keep that on the down low. We're in our civilian clothes today.
This is our
However, I
That's right.
pre-telephone
wash and
booth.
condition my hair, and specifically for this show. And I think Gene said he was, you see that Megan and I have our civilian clothes on, and Gene is halfway to his superhero status with that exploding shirt right there.
Right. And if we took our glasses off, you wouldn't recognize any of us. We would be
And we
completely
wouldn't recognize us.
unrecognizable.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
We would be a different person.
Totally different.
And,
Who even is that?
and show
And that
us a
makes me
phone
wonder
booth.
how Superman even saw where he was going after taking his glasses off.
I don't know. I only need mine for reading. So it's really funny because I only have to put mine on when I'm trying to read comments over here. But when I'm doing a show where I don't need to read comments, I usually don't wear mine. And when I'm out in public, a lot of people, it's so funny. I was at the trial in Arizona. I was at the sentencing, and people did not recognize me. And it's so funny because literally the only thing that was different was that I was not wearing my glasses. And I was like, is that really that effective of a disguise?
They're like, who's that lady over there that's not wearing glasses?
Yeah, I was even, I went live prior to the sentencing. I was wearing a yellow dress, bright yellow. And then after the sentencing was over, I was outside the courtroom, walking around. You could see me during the press conference walking around with my bright yellow dress. But people were like, who is that? I don't recognize that person. It was very weird.
Captain Marvel
All right.
said.
That's right. And I'm glad that you chose, well, actually it was Michelle. Michelle is Jean's wonderful wife who did the thumbnail. She also did these beautiful paintings that you can see over my shoulders here. She's wonderful. So to get to the headline, because people in the comments or in the chat are asking, Jean, you're the one who sort of came up with that headline. Can you break it down in a nutshell for us? And if you like, I can put an article up here on the screen.
Yeah, so let's throw the article up on the screen. An appeals court overruled the LDS Church's position on a child sex abuse case, and I hope we don't get dinged for that. But anyhow,
well, we can just say SA.
Yeah, SA case.
That's very good news, by the way. Tim Rathbone was saying,
very good news.
Is this good news or bad news? I'm like,
yes,
this is great news.
Yeah, they found that the clergy penitent privilege doesn't exempt the Mormon Church from reporting evidence of CSA.
That's right. And the lawsuit was filed by 2 daughters and a son who were victims of Paul Adams that had been dismissed by a judge. The judge ruled there was no evidence. Church officials knew of the abuse. And then something happened, and I'm not exactly sure. But the Court of Appeals had ruled before Dickerson dismissed the case that the church confessionals in this case were protected. But the new ruling said a jury should decide if church leaders knew of the abuse in other ways. And that's one thing I've learned since Mormon true crime has come up, that the jury are the fact finders.
That's right. So from what I understand, there was a bishop involved in this, small branch in Arizona. He heard
Arizona.
Yes, he heard the abuser's confession, but then he told the children's mother about the abuse, and so that's what allowed the court to say that the bishop waived the clergy penitent privilege when he informed the mother of the abuse of, it was unfortunately her own children, and unfortunately it was her husband that had SA all 6, I believe, of her children.
Right. Once you tell somebody a secret, it's not really a secret anymore.
Yeah.
And if I can throw a few details in here. Once upon a time, this man went to his bishop feeling guilty that he had been abusing his small 2 children. And the bishop listened to this and called the hotline, going to the church's attorneys. And the church attorneys said, well, let us look up the law in Arizona. Then they called him back and said, look, you don't have to report this. You can, but if you do, you won't have our backing. We are counseling you to not report this to law enforcement. And they told this to 2 bishops, because this was over a period of about 11 years. In the meantime, so the bishop didn't report it to law enforcement. In the meantime, this man continued to essay his young, tiny little. There was a 1 year old, a 3 year old, and a 6 year old. And the most disgusting thing about this is he would videotape everything he was doing and put it
Yeah.
on the dark web. So, yeah, the church attorneys actually told him not to report this to the law enforcement authorities. And the reason being, they didn't want the church to look bad.
Right.
And so, in the name of and sacrificing these kids' safety, they didn't report it to law enforcement. Now, old boy ends up going to jail, but he committed suicide while in there. So he's gone and dead. Now the
Yeah.
kids are grown up. They're teenagers now, and they're filing a lawsuit against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the first court, the lower court, the trial court, threw it out and said, no, the confidentiality clause was in force. He didn't have to report it, so we're tossing this case out. Well, the wise attorney came back and said, oh, hold on a minute. The bishop made his wife stand in the office while the husband confessed it, and there went the confidentiality clause. So that's out the window. So now
Right.
we're going to appeal this, and they did. And the court said, you know what? Yeah, this does need to go to court again, and hopefully they will have a fat lawsuit on their hands.
Yeah, and so Eliza is asking, clergy and other faiths are mandated reporters, and I don't know about other faiths, but I know that the LDS Church, they're not mandated reporters, but that is what I am asking for. This is what I'm calling for: is everyone to write to their state and United States representatives and senators to make all clergy mandated reporters. This is one of the things that we can do to protect children, because we know that the LDS Church is not going to change its policies. The LDS Church is very comfortable where it is, sort of denying that these things happen very often and having their abuse helpline answered by attorneys. They're very comfortable where they are. So a way to make them uncomfortable would be to have the state that you live in pass legislation that makes church clergy mandated reporters in all cases. That would be a really good start. The other thing is, if any of you have contact with a bishop or a stake president, if you're on friendly terms with them, to please plead with them, to write them, to beg them to please call 911 when these things get reported, and then call the helpline. Because number one should be protecting the children, and number two should be calling the helpline, because we all know the helpline is staffed by attorneys, not by social workers, not by therapists. And these bishops who don't have training in dealing with these really difficult situations, they should be calling 911 and protecting the children first, and then, calling the helpline afterward to see what the church wants them to do. Because no matter what the helpline tells you to do, it should be about protecting kids first. That's the moral thing to do. That's the ethical thing to do. That's the Christ-like thing to do.
That's some incredible points. I do want to say, though, that there are some states where it is mandatory reporting. It's a state-by-state basis. Arizona, unfortunately, does not mandate reporting when it
Right.
comes to clergy perpetrator conversations.
Right.
And the attorneys, they're only out for one thing, and that's their job is make the church look good. That's it.
Right.
Not to protect the kids.
Yeah. And sometimes the church gets around it, even in those states where the clergy is supposed to be a mandated reporter. The church claims, LDS Church claims, their clergy are not paid clergy. And so they try to basically skirt the law by saying, well, our clergy are just volunteers. They're technically not trained to be clergy. They don't hold a paid position with the church. And so even if clergy are mandated reporters in the state, they'll say, well, our volunteers are technically not considered clergy because they're not trained and educated in that way, which, by the way, why aren't they? They should be.
Right.
And this is my other contention, is that the LDS Church has enough money that it could do background checks on every single adult in the ward. They could, they have the money and influence to make all of their clergy mandated reporters. They could actually employ a full-time social worker or mental health professional in every single ward to handle these things, but they won't, because, when I was at Sunstone, one of the most shocking things that I heard that was true, there was a symposium on the Architecture of Abuse podcast that Alyssa Grenfell she's hosting with Tim Kosnoff, who's an attorney who has done nothing but handle SA cases against the LDS Church for the last 20 years or so. And somebody in the audience asked him, what's the main thing that the church could do? And he listed several things. One of them was to have the clergy call 911. But he said the problem is the church won't ever do that because they don't care. If they cared, they could put all of these things into place. They have enough money to do it. They have the resources to do it, but they don't, because they don't care. And that's the bottom line. So if the corporation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints doesn't care about the children, then it's up to the local people to care about the children more and to do the things that are the right things to protect kids.
This is like a grade school.
I just put in the comments. I hope you can see it too. Can you see that, Megan?
Yeah.
That we originally heard this and we called it the AP story. That's all we knew about it. Was 2 years ago, a little bit more than 2 years ago. And it was a really good article written by a famous guy who broke the story of the Catholic abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the same guy. And I wonder if in a few years there'll be another calling on Mark Ruffalo to take that position and do a whole movie about how the Mormon Church has covered up abuse.
Right. And this is the story of Chelsea Goodrich, whose father was a bishop and SA'd her. And famously, she has recordings of her interactions with a church official who offered to basically pay for her silence and her mother's silence. So if you haven't heard of this story or read about it, you definitely should watch, read, and listen. There are a couple of places online where you can hear the actual recordings between Chelsea, her mother, and the LDS individual who was, speaking on behalf of the church and basically was trying to buy their silence.
That's right. And and Randy or whoever, we're going to try to get the creators of the Architecture of Abuse, or at least the participants, to come on our show, because right now that channel only has like 451 subscribers, and it's a story that should have tens of thousands of subscribers. People should be sharing it with their friends. And we heard a little bit about it at Sunstone, and we're going to try to see if we can get Tim Kosnoff on and Alyssa Grenfell and others.
It's amazing. If you haven't listened to Architecture of Abuse, it is absolutely amazing the way that they expose essentially the things that are put in place in the LDS Church that allows this abuse to happen and to continue.
Well, it's like a grade school who has a couple of teachers that are continually SAing the little students, and the school keeps protecting those teachers so it doesn't make the school look bad.
Right.
How long would that school last? Not very long, but the church has deep pockets and can fight all these things in court or pay the people off but it doesn't solve the problem. Like you said, the only thing that's going to solve it is pleading with the bishops and the stake presidents to make this stop, make it go away by informing authorities right away.
Yeah.
Sounds like we have our first caller.
Yes. So I don't quite have this perfect yet. So give me a
The suspense is killing me.
Yeah, so we're going to hope to have this all ironed out in a few weeks, but we're going to fix every problem that we have live right now.
Well, you and I can just banter back and forth, Gene, while Megan is handling the technical
caller. Are you
business.
there?
Oh,
Hello. I
can you hear us now?
Okay, so I have Kara on the line, and can you guys hear Kara?
No,
Say hello,
I haven't
Kara.
heard Kara.
Okay, so I'm trying to get. I can hear you, but so far they can't hear you in the studio. So give me 1 second here.
These are the examples of gremlins that really do their jobs.
We did test
Well, you
all of
know.
this out. Oh, here we go. I think that's what I have to do. Okay, now say hello, Kara.
Hey, everybody.
Yay,
Okay,
we
good.
hear
So
you.
so we can hear you now. Okay. Now the tricky thing is that we'll be able to hear you, but unfortunately you'll only able to hear me and not Randy and Jean. So please go ahead with your comment.
Okay, perfect. Hey, I just did a brief search on, I think it was just on Google, and came up with what Arizona's mandated reporting laws are. And Arizona actually, since 2024, is listed as a mandatory reporter for clergy members. So I'm really curious. It sounds like maybe the church's issue is not it's kind of like what is more important is it the mandated reporter of the clergy to protect the child, which we obviously know the church is not prioritizing that.
Right.
But it sounds like the church is prioritizing the confessional, and that's just tragic to me
Yeah.
because Arizona, they are mandatory reporters in Arizona, and there is, I found the phone number. There's even an anonymous phone line that the bishops could have called to anonymously report to the Arizona Child Protective Services and or law enforcement, and they could have done it anonymously. So this is definitely not about children.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and hang up and then we'll comment, but thank you for calling in. We appreciate it. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, so if
Uh,
the state of Arizona does have, they have an anonymous line that clergy can call into, that means that they wouldn't have to give their name or any details like that, expose themselves, so to speak. But they could call into this anonymous line. So what do you guys think about that?
I think this was over a decade ago that the incident occurred. And at that time, Arizona didn't have the mandated reporter. And I'm so grateful that they've come around and changed that. Because now, if the clergy doesn't report it, then I believe that becomes a punishable offense, correct?
Right.
Right. So
And also, one thing is that one of the chat people noted that one of the bishops was a healthcare provider. So once they heard something, they automatically, as a healthcare provider, should have been a mandated reporter.
right, exactly.
It was the kids' bishop who was also their doctor.
Yeah,
So he
physician.
reported as a doctor or a bishop. So yeah, that's going to
Right.
trial. Hallelujah.
Right. So I know that when I was a teacher, I was a mandated reporter, which meant that if a child did an outcry to me, Or even if they didn't say anything to me at all, but I suspected by their behavior or their appearance that there was of any kind, then I was required to report it. And if I didn't report it and it was later found that that was happening, then I could be sued or I could be held accountable, as well as the school district. And so that was something I took very seriously when I was a teacher. I was on the phone with Child Protective Services, unfortunately, many, many times, made many, many reports on behalf of students, both who vocalized things and both who did not vocalize things. So it was something that I considered very important to part of my job, to be on the lookout for those things, because there are so many kids who are experiencing adverse circumstances in their own homes, and it never gets reported.
Plus, if you think about it, this is the time that the people who actually train to handle, train to care for the abused, train to help to prevent further abuse, train to do all the things that we want protections for the people that are not protected here in this circumstance.
Exactly. A lot of these kids don't feel like they have a safe person to talk to. And a lot of times they feel like they don't have a safe adult to talk to. And so that's why it's so important for all of us to be on the lookout for that and be aware from it.
I hear a caller.
Yes, we have another caller.
Call from. Hi, my name is Kim.
So this is Kim. Kim, can you say hello?
I can hear.
Hello.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for calling in. So we can hear you. Please go ahead with your comment.
Okay, we have a delayed, so I'm going to walk away from my iPad.
Okay, yeah, you'll probably have to mute your YouTube.
Okay. All right. First of all, Megan, I want to thank you so much for all the coverage that you've provided for everybody with the Lori Vallow case, and your comment, your statement to the court that you read on your podcast that I listened to last night was one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. And I just want to give you a shout out for that.
Thanks.
And also just how admired you are for all of the work that you do on behalf of women and victims and people who don't have a voice.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Secondly, I'm looking at this court case. Hopefully, if this ruling is upheld, which I pray it is, if I'm hoping that there will be positive ramifications, consequences for, I'm going to suppose, thousands of people who have been victims of SA that was protected and or sanctioned by the church. I mean, I'm looking forward. I realize there are statutes of limitations on certain things, but I've also, been aware of cases where that was somehow overcome. And if, victims start speaking out and start threatening lawsuits and start filing lawsuits in order to get a voice and in order to find some sort of, I'm looking for the right word, some sort of accountability from people that should have protected them, I think that would be an amazing thing.
Yeah,
Sure
I
would.
agree with that. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for calling in, and we'll go ahead and let you go, and we'll comment. But I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Megan, and thank you to Jean and Randy.
Yeah, take care. So this is
Thank
one of
you
the
for
other
calling,
things.
Kim.
Yeah, thank you. This is one of the other things that was mentioned during that architecture of abuse symposium, or I guess session at the symposium that we attended, where they said, we need to get the statute of limitations removed for SA cases. And so that's another thing that you can include when you're writing your representatives, that, and I stood up and said this, as I was in that session, I was 45 years old before I felt comfortable reporting the things that happened to me when I was between the ages of 7 and 11. And so to have the statute of limitations at the age of 21 is absolutely ridiculous, because there are so few people who are able, psychologically able at that point in their lives, to go and report a relative, a friend, a clergy member, somebody that they trusted and were close to. The statute of limitations just really harms victims so much, and we need to get that removed.
Amen. Now I heard some beeping while
Yeah,
Kim
so
was on the phone. And Kim, thank you for calling in. Does that beeping mean it was another caller trying to call in?
yes, yeah. So we only have one line.
So-
We haven't quite gotten it all figured out yet, guys. So thanks for your patience, and just if you don't get through, please try back again.
Yeah, give it another shot because we want to hear from you. And
Yeah,
thank
sorry
you,
about
Chandra,
that.
for putting up the 1-800 SOS Child line.
Yeah, appreciate
That's
that.
easy
That's in
to remember.
Arizona. But also, if you if you suspect that a child is being harmed, you can always call 911, or you can call the non-emergency line as well. Most states have a phone number for Child Protective Services, and I apologize, I don't know what it is internationally, but it's pretty easy to Google and look it up.
And if somebody happens to be driving or otherwise unable to call right now, if our show is still going in a half hour and we're talking about some other subject, you could always call and talk about a prior subject that we've been talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I am looking up the number that Megan was trying to find as we speak.
The international line for Child Protective Services.
Yes.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate that.
You bet. Yeah, there's a National Child Protective Services hotline. And the number is, I don't know if we can put this up, if there's any way to do it.
Yeah,
I
we
can
can.
type
But,
it in the chat.
It's 1-866-363-4276. That's 1-866-363-4276. And it's a 24-hour, 7 days a week hotline.
That's perfect. Thank you, Randy. Appreciate that.
You bet.
Yeah, so all too often I hear of these cases of, individuals that I know who have been victimized by church leaders that they respect, that they admire, and it's very confusing as a child when someone who is supposed to protect you is the one who's perpetuating the abuse, because it creates all kinds of confusion in the mind of a child. Children are very prone to think about the long-term consequences for a trusted individual rather than to think about their own health and safety. And, a lot of times these people are in positions of authority or power, and it's very difficult as a child to overcome the cognitive dissonance of, quote unquote, getting someone in trouble. That's what most children have an obstacle with, where these things are concerned. The other thing to consider too is, that we're taught as children to trust our church leaders. And, one of the things that they bring up in the Architecture of Abuse podcast is that when perpetrators realize that there's a system that protects the perpetrator rather than the child, they're more likely to get involved in that system. So we've got another call here, but I'll just say, people who are wanting to victimize children are more prone to get involved in an organization where they know that they're going to be protected over the child, which is really tragic.
Sure.
Magnet.
So, hello there, caller. Can you say hello?
Hey, my name's Lisa. I'm calling in to talk about obviously what we're talking about.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, so I just want to let you guys know too. I used to work medical in a medium and maximum security prison, actually the one that Chad Daybell was at.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, when I was there, there was an offender getting out on parole, and one of the other offenders who's in there for life would like taunt people and stuff because he has nothing better to do. He's in there for life, and he abused children in this way. And he blatantly told me, yeah, like we have our own communities and we tell each other, like, go into specifically Jehovah's Witnesses, but go into the churches because they don't have street smarts. And that's where we tell each other, one place they tell each other to go to get their fix. So I tell all my family members, like, you want to go to church and stuff, fine, but they do not do background checks on these people. So if you want to put your minor in a room alone with some man you really don't know, you might want to think twice about it, because there are communities of people who prey on children on purpose, and they go to the churches because they know nothing's going to happen to them, you know?
Right, right. That's so eye-opening, and thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Thank you for calling
Yeah.
in.
Yep. Thank
That's
you.
a good point. It's like
Yeah.
a harvest for these child
Call from
predators.
Evelyn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the really scary thing, is to realize that yes, predators do talk to each other, and they do share with each other ways that they can get around the system, ways that they can get what they're looking for. And unfortunately, it's really, really scary to hear this confirmed, from someone who's actually heard from these people, that they say, yeah, go to the churches because they're not educated well enough.
You know,
Um,
one of our
Go
viewers
ahead.
put a comment up on the
Hello,
screen.
Megan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Give us 1 second here. Go ahead, Randy.
Okay,
I
no
was just
problem.
going to say it's incredibly important, and this should go unsaid, or it should be able to go. It's really important that parents teach their children what's appropriate, what's not, what boundaries are correct. And when those boundaries are breached, there's so many kids who don't know that that's not proper because it's
Right.
an adult that they're trusting. And that, if you teach your kids ahead of time, that just might help stave off some of these scumbags.
Exactly. One of the things that I talked about very early on in my social media presence was this very idea of teaching our kids that it's okay to deny, physical touch from an adult. You don't have to accept a hug or a kiss from a family member. Teach your kids that it's okay to say no, thank you. Teach your kids that it's okay to say, I don't want a hug. Ask your children, do you want to hug this person, rather than saying, give your grandma a hug. Ask them, do you want to give them a hug? Is it okay if I hug you? If you're a safe adult, you're going to ask the child, is it okay if I hug you? And you're never going to try to cross that line of giving affection to a child that is, unwelcome or unsolicited. And so, it's up to the parents to teach the kids healthy boundaries. It's also up to us adults, as safe adults, when we're interacting with someone else's kids, to not give unsolicited affection. Caller, who's on the line there? Thank you for waiting for a minute.
Hi, caller, no problem. This is Evelyn.
Hi, Evelyn. Thanks for calling in.
Great to, of course. Glad to talk with all of you. I wanted to respond to the Jasmine Rapalai apologetic that she posted about this, and how she's talking about the FAIR conference, the lawyer talking about how it's actually a great idea for bishops not to be mandated reporters because it makes everything better for perpetrators and victims, and how offensive that was, and far off base. As a girl raised in the LDS church, I didn't even know I wasn't trusted to know what to wear, how many ears to put, how many piercings to have in my ears, who to marry, when to go on a mission, when to have, all of this was to be run by an ecclesiastical leader or a father or some other patriarchal male to make sure that I was on base. So to have the wherewithal as a victim to report your abuse is wild.
Yeah.
The conditioning that goes on to shut it all down and have no trust of your body and intuition. And I was wondering, Megan, as like someone who experienced it, how did it feel for you to hear her say that?
Of course, it's always super disturbing to me when I hear adults trying to excuse the bad behavior of other adults that harms children. And it's mind blowing to me that somebody can suspend their critical thinking that much to believe that it's, it's actually a really good thing that our bishops don't call in. I can't understand in what world you could really believe that. Anybody who is a parent or who cares for children at all is going to think in the mindset of the thing that is the best for the child. And I think an apologetic like that suspends that thought and that idea and forces you to think about what's the best thing for the church, what's the best thing for the individual who's perpetrating the abuse. So I really don't understand that. And as a parent myself, I was always better at advocating for my children than I was for myself. And so, to have somebody who is advocating against children, to me, it's just really disgusting.
Yeah, it feels quite irresponsible. Thank you for responding.
Yeah, thanks so much for calling in with that. I appreciate it because we didn't put up the apologetic answer, but I appreciate you pointing that out.
There were so many people offended by that. So many people offended by that little video she did.
So I put the video in the description, and not the description, in the chat, so that people can go look at it. It's like 2.5 minutes or whatever it is.
Do you want to play it so that we can respond a little bit? Or would you rather not give it air?
Yeah, let's not give it air. It's just, it's not that good. But
yeah,
the other thing is, like, since Randy and I can't really be heard by the callers, and we had sort of a few callers in a row, I just want to say I'm pretty sure Lisa from a few callers ago was a Lisa that I became friends with as a recently no longer believing Mormon, right? And Lisa and I had some good talks, and she wanted to start a podcast, and I was her first interviewee, and she wanted to expose the harm in the church. And but I was a horrible interviewee. Instead of being more outgoing or whatever, I was really measured. I was trying to monitor what I say and like, in a way, like, not offend anybody. And so I apologize, Lisa, that I wasn't a better first guest, but I'm only this much better than I was back then. But it was helpful to experience something like that. It was a good experience. And so,
yeah, thank you for that.
Yes. Kiki just brought up an interesting point, that she was speaking to a member friend and they accused her of lying about this being a problem in the church, which just blows me away because it is an absolute epidemic that has swept over and if anyone denies it, they're closing their eyes. They're not paying attention. They're not even looking at the news. They're just, there's a lot of commercials on now that show the sister missionaries or a couple of elders saying, being cutesy and saying, you come to Christ, come to the Church of Christ. And, what was my point here? Senior
I wonder
moment.
what church that is.
Right. But, crud. Listen, you got to trust me. That was a really good thought I had, and I just went right out my ear. It had something to do with what Kiki was, whatever Kiki was saying. Gosh dang it.
Yeah, she was saying that people were saying she was lying when they're saying, oh, it's not as big of a problem as we think it is. I got news for you people. It's a way bigger problem than we think it is. The number of cases where this happens and gets reported is a very small percentage of what has actually happened. And, I can tell you from my own experience, I was not the only one who was a victim of trafficking when I was a child. There were many, many children in my neighborhood who were victims of this same perpetrator. And, I'm the only one, as far as I know, that has come out and spoken publicly about it. I'm the only one who made a police report about it. And the reason I know that is because the police basically told me, without corroboration from another source, they went and talked to the people who were the abusers. And of course, they denied it. But without a corroboration from a second source, there's literally nothing that they can do about it. And so, I don't blame anyone who doesn't come forward to report what happened to them, because I know how hard that is to do. And also, as a victim, as a survivor, it's so hopeless to do it, because I know that literally none of the perpetrators in my past will ever face any sort of legal ramifications for what they did. So reporting it seems really hopeless. And so I don't blame people who don't come forward for that reason, because you're kind of re-traumatizing yourself for, what some people believe is basically no reason. But it's just so important to believe victims, believe survivors. And, I'm going to always report this statistic as well. The false reports, people are so afraid of false reports, but the actual statistic coming from the law enforcement agencies who keep statistics about SA reporting, the actual statistic is that false reports are less than 6% of those things that get reported. And when law enforcement is involved, that number drops down to 3%. So we're talking about less than 3% of people who report an SA to law enforcement turn out to be false reports. And so we need to believe victims and support victims.
So Kendall's wondering if you can join on a video.
Yeah, of course.
Send up a link.
Yeah, I'll put it. There it is, right there.
So I just sent Kendall a link, and also you can put it in the. I'm not sure if it would work for me putting it in, but we can have people join on video as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Puzzle Pieces,
where there's smoke, there's fire. And these people who just flat out don't want to believe someone, that's scary. And that probably happens more often than we'd like to think.
And Kendall thought that Randy's point was that the church hides and obscures things itself instead of being transparent.
Right.
Yes, that is my point.
Yeah. So
my drinking glass I'm using because it matches Jean's shirt. I just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you for a little levity.
And Randy, did you do a list of other topics? I mean, there's other things in the news that we can talk about. We can still come back to the main topic, but
yeah, Megan had an interesting topic that I hope comes to pass regarding past and testimony meetings.
Yeah, this is kind of a silly thing, and we'll have to do this on another show, because I think we all have experienced wild and crazy fast and testimony meetings. But apparently, according to the Mormon Reddit subreddit, which isn't always the most reliable source of truth, but apparently Unhinged Open Mic Sunday might finally be going away. It says, a while ago, the church assigned some general authorities and even a couple of apostles to unexpectedly drop by random sacrament meetings. And I'm going to say in Utah, because they're not sending them all over the country to do this. But apparently there have been enough general authorities reporting back to discuss the possibility that fast and testimony meeting is better off in the past. So it's a possibility it could be going away, that crazy open mic Sunday.
Yay.
Let's hope.
Sounds like another caller.
Yes. Hi, Terry. Are you there? Can you guys hear Terry?
No.
No. Okay, hold on. Let me make sure that I probably need to switch tabs. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. There we go. How about now? Can you guys hear Terry now?
I
Terry,
don't hear
say
anything yet.
hello. Say hello, Terry. Can you hear Terry? No?
No.
Uh-oh. I might have totally messed it up when I switched to that other tab. Hang on, give us 1 second here. Let me try taking this other one out. Okay, how about now? Say hello, Terry. Oh, Carrie, sorry about that. Can you guys hear Carrie?
Have Carrie say something else.
Yeah, Carrie is talking. Let me actually switch it so that my audio is coming through the speakers and see if that changes it. Okay, say hello again, Carrie. How about now? Can you guys hear Carrie?
No.
No, I cannot hear anything. All right, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you, Carrie, go ahead and tell me your comment, and I will say it out loud. So I apologize for the technical difficulties.
We'll have to interpret the look on Megan's face.
Go ahead. So go ahead.
It's like we have an interpreter.
Yes, Megan's receiving revelation right now.
Uh-huh. She seems to be translating. She's getting translated. She's glowing.
Yeah, and Kendall, if you want to try to join the show, maybe you could be already joined in the bottom. Then we'll wait for Megan to put you on the show. But we'll get this caller first.
I can't wait to see if Megan really remembers this entire comment, because that's long. It's like that game you play where, you say something, it goes around a circle and it comes out totally different.
Telephone game.
But she's staying pretty straight-faced. So
Yeah.
she must not be comprehending what we're saying about her. But we sure appreciate her and her. We consider Megan the smart one of the group, because if it was up to us, people would have to have a tin can and string for people to communicate.
I think after 2 minutes, she'll come on and say, the caller really likes Jean's shirt.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Go ahead. Well, so let me tell so far, and then you can tell me what you ended up doing. So this is Carrie. Carrie says that he had a situation where he was having to report something and called the hotline. And stop me if I'm getting this wrong, Carrie. And the hotline questions, what they were asking was that they wanted to know if this perpetrator had a history of this, if they were well known in the community, asking all of these questions that had nothing to do with the victim, had nothing to do with the situation. These questions were clearly designed to protect the church. And so that was obviously disturbing. And then, Carrie, did I leave anything out that I need to include there?
Was it a church hotline?
It was the church hotline.
Oh, well, there you go.
That's right. Questions
What
like,
was the victim wearing?
Did it happen on church property?
Yeah, so
Stuff like that.
Were their
right.
shoulders showing?
So they were
Yeah,
asking if it
fascinating.
happened on church property, and it was very clear that they just wanted to protect the church, and that was their only goal. So when Carrie started asking them questions about, what was going on, it was very clear that it was the attorneys. So then what did you do, Carrie?
Do you think this is the Carrie that you and I know, Gene?
No, because Carrie, the Black Backyard Professor, is doing his own show right now.
No. Well,
yes. So I know that Radio Free Mormon and Bill Reel went over all the questions that the church hotline has people ask. Has people answer, rather. And it's a bunch of questions that doesn't have anything to do with helping out the victims. And that is the biggest sad part that hopefully gets changed. I actually have a friend who about 8 years ago was abused by her stepfather in my ward. And she told me
wow,
about it. But she felt she got no help from the bishop or the church. And the bishop's my friend. And I'm going to see if I can get him an opportunity to respond and see what he says, what his experience was with that whole thing.
There you go.
That's in the works.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for calling in, Carrie. I'm gonna relate the rest of this, and if I get it wrong, let me know in the chat, okay? Thanks so much for calling in. I really appreciate it. So I can confirm, guys, that it was not Backyard Professor. It may be the Carrie that you know, because he did mention talking to Gene before, but he said basically what he did is he got in touch with the parent, was able to talk with the parent and the child, and then they went in and got a temporary restraining order against the perpetrator, so they were able to protect the children. So it was clear Curtin McConkie, the hotline, the church hotline, had no intention of doing any of that. But they were able to go in and get the restraining order to protect the kids. And then apparently they did get the perpetrator to confess. But the fact that the hotline was basically, telling them, not to do any of that. And they just wanted to ask the questions that were going to, basically protect the church. And I will say this is important to mention as well. Somebody in the chat is saying that they're getting ads on YouTube to report abuse by the LDS Church. So I will say the LDS Church frequently advertises on my channel, both for missionary work and Book of Mormon things. People tell me this all the time, that isn't it ironic that you're talking about violence in the Book of Mormon and the LDS Church is saying, come get a free copy of the Book of Mormon. There are a couple of law firms out there also who are supporting victims of the church or abuse by church officials. And so please, as always, investigate the source of who's doing the advertising. But it's not surprising at all that the LDS Church would want to advertise their good stuff, quote unquote, when we're talking about negative stuff. So
that jostled.
Go ahead.
Before you bring Kendall in, that jostled my memory because I'll forget it again. Remember, I said I had a senior moment? And it was Kiki that made me think of this. You see these advertisements on Facebook, on TikTok all the time. Have you been sexually abused by a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And look at the comments sometime. And it's usually a member saying, this is all lies. These are lies. This is not happening. It's disgusting because why do they think this has to be advertised? The members themselves go on and comment that it's lies and that it's not a real thing.
Right. Yeah, because, the apologists for the church want people to believe this isn't happening or that it's not happening very often. And I guarantee you it's happening. I've spoken to individuals who it's happened to. I know that it's not just anecdotal information. The statistics are actually quite staggering.
Right.
Hey, Kendall, good to see you.
Oh, hello. Hi, good to see all of you.
Hi,
I wish it were a more upbeat topic, but this is, wow, just so important to talk about. I have like 3 or 4 thoughts. I don't know which one to start with, but I just think it's a moral collapse that the church hasn't taken more responsibility for this. Have you guys been aware that before Pope Francis passed, he explicitly had a press conference and said, I feel like I need to take responsibility for this. This should not be in the shadows. We need to talk about this, and I will have consequences. And it was public. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has done absolutely nothing equivalent other than denying and saying, you know, what their legal representatives say.
Right.
Deny.
Right. Hiding it.
And I just think the moral contrast between those two people, I mean, I don't know too much about the Catholic Church. I just found that news article anecdotally. I wasn't searching for it, but I'm pretty up to date on what the church does, and they don't put this out in public. And that's what I would say is the number one contributor to this problem is we don't, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we don't have the skill set to talk about stuff like this, to talk about problems at all. Our go-to is to just suppress and put on a happy face and just, it never happened.
Well, when you're taught not to criticize the leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true, there is no safe space in which you can talk about something this problematic and not get the kind of pushback that we're already seeing from the apologists and from, just lay members who want us to believe that this isn't happening, or who want to turn the attention away from the church leadership and say it's not their fault. It's just a couple of bad eggs. Well, I would argue that it's not just a couple of bad eggs. Have you seen how much Mormon true crime is happening right now? It's a lot.
Just Google it. You'll be amazed at the number of incidences. As a matter of fact, I sent you a letter from Prescott, Arizona, about a new case. And once again, it's an LDS family who's SAing children.
Yeah, I actually have this right here, and we can pull it up here. It says on July 1st, 2025, this is Payson, Arizona, Payson Police Department received information alleging that Waylon, quote, Raleigh White may have been involved in inappropriate relationships with multiple juveniles in the Payson area. Additional allegations indicated that Mr. White had provided illegal substances to the juveniles during these encounters. Over the following weeks, Payson Police Department detectives conducted an extensive investigation, including multiple interviews with victims, other involved parties, and executed search warrants relating to the allegations. Based on the evidence obtained, detectives established probable cause to arrest Mr. White for several felony offenses, including sexual conduct with a minor involving a minor in a drug offense. On Monday, July 28th, Mr. White was taken into custody without incident and booked into the Gila County Jail in Payson. Mr. White is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This is the important part, everyone. Anyone with additional information related to this investigation or who believes they may be a victim is urged to contact the Payson Police Department, and it gives the number 928-474-5177. And somebody in the comments here says, last I heard, he has 18 counts against him. So that's the other thing that I want to talk about that's super, super important for everybody to understand, is that when there is one victim, the chances are extremely high that there is more than one victim. And so, I'm always obviously an advocate of people coming forward, telling their story if they're able, if it's safe for them to do so psychologically, because it does give other survivors the courage that they need to come forward and to be believed.
This post that you just read, Megan, was posted by some friends of mine. And even though it didn't say in the letter, I said, do you guys know if he was associated with a particular religion? And they all answered practically simultaneous. He was Mormon. He was LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So you're saying more than a couple of dozen bad eggs?
Yeah, there's a lot of bad eggs.
Yeah, so many.
So I kind of want to talk about, like, when I was a kid, I knew nothing of any possibility of danger. It was exactly like you were talking about, where like, I mean, it's ripe fruit for the taking because we're so naive growing up in the church. But I kind of
Trust
want
every
to talk more
adult.
about what Randy just said about, like, if you look up the information, you find the scandals, you're not aware of the news if you don't know about the sex scandals. And my background is in psychology, and I have extensive stuff on the internet that I've written and podcasts about how new and disconfirming information does not enter your brain. We literally just bypass it until your brain is ready for that information. People who like the church already will not. They don't have the capacity to input what we are saying to them. So I would like to talk more about how is a small bit of information that has the most likelihood to get through to their brain, not trigger them, but so they actually listen and get information from us on this topic. Because if we just say, oh, sex scandal, anything big, their brain will turn off.
How to disimperviate them, how to make it sink in that, hey, this really might be a problem.
No,
And do you have
not
any answers?
that's probably too big of an ask. Just say something like, I don't know, like, well, can we all agree that children's safety should be the number one priority? That might be too triggering. I don't know, but I'm here to tell you, the people that need this information, 97% of them do not think it's a problem. It's exactly like what we've been saying. This does not happen. These are lies against a church that I love from people who they just hate the church. That's their only motivation. I want to talk about how to reach those people.
And how do you think would be an effective method, Kendall?
Yeah. So what is our goal when they're closed off to information in a general sense? I think it should be some small thing like what Megan was saying earlier about like getting rid of the statute of limitation. Just something that like even people who love the church, think it's done no wrong, will get on board with and won't shut their brain off when we start talking about it. Megan, I think you're muted, or you were.
Yeah, I was. No, but I agree with you, Kendall. I think the place to start is exactly what you said, is that can we agree that children should be protected at all costs? If we could just agree on that, just that one thing.
And
you know,
then
I think that's
build the
I think that's where we
conversation
can
once you
start.
get a yes.
Right.
Because
And
if
so
we do what me and Randy want to do naturally, I still do this all the time, is like, do you realize how big of a problem this is and how bad it is? Blah, blah, blah. If you start with that,
Right.
you've already lost.
right.
That's
Thank
a
you
good
so
point.
much for
Good
this
point, Kendall.
super chat. But yes,
Yes.
I agree with you too. You know, it can get to the point where people just turn their brains off, and we don't want that. So I think if we start with that idea, like, can you just agree that we should protect children above everything else? Children deserve to be protected over anybody else. Like, start with that idea. Can we agree children need to be protected? Yes. Okay. Can we agree that children need to be protected at all costs? That one's a little harder. Okay. Can we agree that children should be protected above the reputation of the perpetrator in a general sense, without saying who they are or how they're affiliated? If you can get people to agree that they should be protected above the perpetrator, then we can take the next step and say, what if the perpetrator is a member of the church? Should the child still be protected above the perpetrator? When you come at it from that angle, it's kind of hard to disagree with that logic. It's kind of
Good
hard to
point.
say, oh, well, if they're a member of the church, we should protect them instead of the kid. If you come at it from the angle of the kid's perspective, it's a lot harder to deny that. So should a child be protected above a member of the church? Okay, if we can agree on that, then should a child be protected above a leader of the church, a primary teacher? Okay, how about a home teacher? Okay, how about a counselor in the bishopric? Okay, how about a bishop? I had a friend who was SA'd by their bishop. You know, they were a neighbor, and the bishop had a daughter their same age, and there were sleepovers happening. So, this is a person who lives down the street from them, somebody that they trust, the parents trust. And I will tell you this, some people in the chat are asking, like, how do we better protect children? I've done a lot of research on this because of my own experience being trafficked as a child. Perpetrators are much less likely to victimize someone who has an adult in their life who is a strong presence. And that doesn't necessarily mean like a big, buff, burly person. It simply means someone who is willing to look someone in the eye. And so you have to be the kind of parent who is willing to go to that practice, that soccer practice, or that choir practice, or that whatever that your kid is going to, and go meet the person who's in charge and walk up to them and shake their hand and look at them in the eye and say, I'm Susan's mother. Nice to meet you. I just wanted to meet you and get a feel for what's going on here so that I know my child is safe. And if you are willing to do that in every situation, and also when your kid is going to play at a friend's house, I'm not a fan of sleepovers. That's something that I didn't do with my kids for years for that exact reason, because you're putting your child in someone else's care during sleeping hours for hours and hours at a time. If you don't know who else is in the house, if you don't know their sleeping habits, their drinking habits, their drug use habits, their porn watching habits, if you don't know those things about them, you probably shouldn't be allowing your child to spend the night in their house. So if you can be assertive with the people who are taking care of your children in every situation, they're much less likely to be victimized.
When I was
I'm
living in
all
Chandler,
about behavior
Arizona,
change, about making a difference, and this comes from Chip and Dan Heath's book, Switch: How to Change When Change is Hard. So I think Megan just gave us a golden nugget, and according to this book, the best way to actually apply this is the next time this topic comes up with someone, just right now, visualize that your first response isn't to react, it isn't to say how bad the situation is. It's just to say what Megan demonstrated, which is, can we agree that we need to protect children? Just start off with something they'll agree with and then build from there. The conversation will go better and we will improve this topic. If we all listening to this podcast can inculcate a better approach to people who we need on our side to this, I think that would be huge.
Thank you.
we had some friends in Chandler, Arizona, and they actually lived right next to us. And their little girl wanted to come over and play with our little girl, and she declined. She says, "No, I don't know anything about you or your husband," and that really made me mad because I was so naive and I was stupid. She was being vigilant. She was being caring. And she had the nerve to say, I don't know anything about you, so I'm not going to entrust my little one over to you. At the time, because this was 100 years ago when I was younger, at the time I was offended. Now I'm thinking, that was really smart of her. Offend people. Do whatever you have to do. Make sure that your child is well protected at the cost of offending someone. In the long run, it pays off.
Yes, in the long run, it's way better to potentially offend a friend of yours and protect your child. And this is such a good point, Full Monty. So many of us think, oh, they're a temple recommend holding member of the church, so I can trust them with my child. Well, you can't, unfortunately, because people lie in their temple recommend interviews all the time, and you just never know. So a temple recommend is no guarantee that somebody's going to be safe with your kid. And then Kiki makes an excellent point here. It is almost always someone that you know. It is not the big bad boogeyman in a white van offering your kid candy when they're walking home from school. it is almost always somebody that you know and that your child knows and that has access to your child. And unfortunately, children can be victimized in a matter of seconds. And so having your child alone in a room with an adult for any reason is not a good idea. I'm so glad that the church ended those, bishop interviews where they're alone with the bishop. But the next step would be to end worthiness interviews in their entirety. Children who are 11, 12 years old don't need to be having worthiness interviews and having someone else tell them whether or not they're worthy.
Do we ever
Amen to that.
expect the church and its members to demystify talking about sexuality? Bringing up the issue I raised earlier, like I didn't have the vocabulary for this kind of stuff until I was in college. Like really, truly, that's how sheltered I was. Is the church gonna make any strides on that? Is that too big of an ask, or what do we think in that space?
I don't think that's too big of an ask. I think that's absolutely imperative that it be done. I don't know if it will be, because there's a lot of imperative things that the church needs to bring to pass, but I don't think it can happen too soon. Can't the church look and see what an epidemic this is? I mean, it's just case after case after case. The 80-year-old man with the van, or not the van, but the candy, always inviting kids into his home, who's now being investigated. He was a former bishop and patriarch and all that. I could be totally wrong on his callings, but that's a new case that just popped up. And yeah, I don't know where it ends, but yeah, Kendall, it's got to come to the forefront. It has to be talked about.
So what structure would intervene on that? Be like, hey, we are going to demystify sexuality for kids. Like I just don't see that happening.
No, so here's the problem is that, and thank you for bringing this up, Kendall, because in a church where we are expected to deny that we are sexual beings until the moment that we get married, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
Yeah,
so
I was completely sexually naive until I got engaged and married. Like that's a huge contributor to this. I was lucky. I didn't have anything happen to me, but oh boy, do I now realize how vulnerable I was. It would have just taken one person in a position of trust, and I would have had a completely different life trajectory.
Yeah, exactly. So the way that the church does not teach about sex and sexuality at all is really harmful, except for that one standards night once a year, but only if you're 14 and up. I don't know if they've changed the ages now at this point, but my parents 100% expected my young women's leaders to give me the talk and to make sure that I knew that I was not supposed to do anything sexual until I was married. And then all of a sudden a switch is supposed to flip and I'm supposed to just start popping out babies. So, the burden is on us as parents. The burden is on us as parents to have healthy, age-appropriate conversations with our kids about sex and sexuality. I believe starting around the age of 8 is the appropriate time to start talking to kids about naming your body parts correctly, using the correct words and phrases for those things, letting children know that that it's okay to come and talk to me about things, having that open communication, listening to your kids about the small things so that when they have big things that they'll come to you. And the most important thing is letting kids know that if anybody makes you feel uncomfortable in any way, please let me know, because sometimes that spidey sense goes off before anything inappropriate actually happens. And then to just say, your body belongs to you, and it is okay for you to say no for any reason to any person at any time.
So that's a difference. Randy doesn't think it's too big of an ask. And Megan, you are saying the church is not going to do this structurally. It's 100% on parents. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't think it's too big of an ask. I just don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think I don't think the ship can turn that fast.
It has to be a directive that comes down from the headquarters. It's got to be a directive or an insert into the lessons manual, whatever. It's got to come from the headquarters. And until the headquarters gets it and decides, let's stop sweeping stuff under the rug, it's getting lumpy, nothing will be
Yeah,
done.
I not tonight. We're not going to solve this problem tonight, but I would love just your minds to be working in the background of like some intervention that we could push that the church do, something in the primary where they actually talk about protecting yourself and they use the vocabulary and the kids understand how this works. I would like to see something like that.
Crowdsource.
Yeah,
So,
I would too.
So Megan, can I share with people why you have that you have some sort of expertise on this?
Oh, sure.
You can make my face full screen if you want to try to do that. But I recommend people buy this book. And Megan, you could tell us the best way of getting it.
Yeah, so so I wrote a book called I Walked Through Fire to Get Here. It is about my healing journey after being trafficked as a child. From the ages of 7 to 11, I was trafficked by a babysitter who lived in my neighborhood and her husband. They had a photo studio in their basement. Basically, they victimized myself and other kids who lived in the neighborhood. And of course, it was horrible and hard to get over, but I've been through a lot of therapy and EMDR and a lot of healing to come through it. And so the book that I wrote was really a sort of a love letter to other survivors, to let people know that it's possible to heal and have a happy life after something horrific like that happens. Obviously, it was, traumatic, and it set me up for future victimization, unfortunately, because I didn't feel safe to tell people. I was not believed when I did tell people, and I'm still not believed today by some people. And so that's why it took me so long to write my book and to make the police reports and to do all the things that were necessary. But I just want to say to people who are watching, if you could please like this episode and share it with your loved ones, share it with anybody who has children, share it with anybody who is willing to hear that we need change. We need systematic change, not just in the LDS church, but in churches everywhere. And we need systematic change in the way that we teach our children about sexuality.
And it shows like this, and there are lots of others. Like we said, there's the Architecture of Abuse that Tim Kosnoff and Alyssa Grenfell and some others participated in. I think Natasha Helfer participated in it, and I think she did her own episode on her experience with that show and what a good thing it was. And they could use some more views. You could scroll up to the top of the chat. I had it posted before, and it takes getting the word out, right? It takes Megan's book. It takes podcasts. It takes advertisements, good or bad, right? It takes lawsuits. All these things are going to help. But yeah, Kendall's sort of the practical one is like, what is it going to look like? What is it going to be that actually does the change once everybody says, okay, let's do something? And so they need to be worked on at the same time. So Kendall would love to just do it all on his own, but he would like to do sort of crowdsourcing. And maybe we could do an episode on that with Kendall, and we can have people participate and crowdsource it and do that. I think Peter Booth.
Yeah, and then let's write a proposal, and then let's get some movement. I still have good relationships with my local church leaders. They would listen.
There's a pattern.
I want a good plan.
There's a pattern in the UK, right? 21st Century Saints. They helped let their leaders know that there was a new law, that if they didn't know what this law was, they were going to be susceptible to fines and legal maneuvers. And just in trying to let their local leaders and others know, they got in trouble from the church until the church really realized, yeah, I guess they're right. We really should do something. So they started, I think, to work with them a little bit. And I don't know if it was legislation that got passed, but they came up with a book or something that a guideline for people to, do the things that they needed to do in order to protect the people that need protection. It's not only just children; there are adults that aren't able to protect themselves, and so it's the whole gamut there. And Peter Bleakley has said on his podcast that all we need to do is put out the problems to the crowd and have a crowdsource solution. He said, the problems of the church could be solved if the church just went into a primary classroom and asked the children, here's the problem, what should we do? The children would come up with better ideas and solutions than what the adult leaders are doing right now. So
I've seen this.
100%.
The advantage of crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
Hey, if any of you listeners want to call in, probably should do it quickly.
Yeah, I've actually got to go. I have tons of things that are in the
Thanks
fire
for being
but
here,
always
Kendall.
a pleasure. Love you guys. Good luck.
Love
Kendall,
Contact me if
we
we want
love
to do
you.
a follow-up. I'm very passionate about this. Okay, see ya.
Yeah.
Thanks
Kendall.
for coming on, Kendall.
Yeah. And I actually have to run as well because my daughter is starting school tomorrow morning. And so I need to go so that I can make sure she has everything that she needs. But I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much, Jean and Randy, for bringing up this, these two news items that we needed to have a conversation about. I was not prepared for how, how deep we were going to get into. Well, we didn't really get deep into my story, but even just mentioning my story. But I'm always happy to talk about it. Of course, it is an issue that is very personal to me. And it's something that I feel is so important that, again, I'm just going to plead for people to please share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And I think every parent needs to hear it, whether you're involved with the LDS Church or not, whether you're involved with any church or not. Every parent needs to know how to talk to their kids about this. It's a difficult subject, and I would love to come back and revisit this topic again and maybe give parents some more pointers about how they can talk to their children and ways that we can protect children, because I'm like Kendall, I'm very passionate about this.
That's right. There's a presentation was given at Sunstone by Radio Free Mormon and Randy Bell. And Randy Bell, whenever he gives presentations, he says, don't believe a word I'm saying. Go do research. If you don't believe what we're saying, do your own research. The information is out there, and we recommend doing your research. And but I believe Megan, no matter what.
Well, I agree with that approach. Don't believe me. I wrote this book as a way to help other survivors, because what I was seeing in all of my therapy was that the other women who had been victimized, they weren't really getting better. They weren't really healing and moving on. And it was really sad to me. So, it's not only about protecting children, but it's also about helping survivors know that there are safe people out there that you can talk to, and that it is possible for you to heal. It is possible to find people who believe you, and just for other survivors to tell their own story, because that gives power to other survivors in turn.
That's right. Thanks, Megan, for all you've done for the show. Thanks, Randy, for being here. And we'll try to do better in the future. We're sowing our oats. I don't know what you call it. We're trying.
We're working out the bugs in our technology.
We're a work in progress.
Yeah.
That's right. And so, but I think it went really well. We learned a little bit. I'm thinking, Megan, you could have like a little, like these 6 steps to get the calls. And then whenever you share your screen, and you could just go back to that and say, oh yeah, do this, and now the calls will go.
Yeah, swimmingly. Hopefully. Yeah. Thanks, Kiki, for the super chat there. And I don't know if I told, but thank you, Puzzle Pieces, again for the super sticker, and Kinder Kim, and Puzzle Pieces again. And thanks, Carolina, for becoming a member. Just appreciate everybody's support. is such an important topic, and I just hope that people will take what we've said to heart and find at least once. And this is what my podcast is always about: making one small change. Find one small thing that you can do to change the way that you think about this, to change the way that you talk about it, and to think about one way that you can protect children. And yes, Peter Higgs, this is going to be a weekly podcast. The team is going to get together once a week to talk about important issues at the intersection of Mormonism and narcissism and true crime.
That's right. And things that are in the news. And it could be either things that are in the last week or the last month or the last 6 months that we maybe thought we should highlight. So thanks everybody for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Sharing is caring. Do all the things. Have a great rest of the 2025. And we'll see you.
Love y'all, mean it.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody who called in. Thanks to everybody who contributed in the chat. And especially thanks to all of you who are sharing your own stories, because that helps to influence other people to tell their stories and to believe survivors. So thank you for being here tonight. Take care, and take good care of yourselves and each other. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right.